All right, so today we're diving into what Jehovah's Witnesses believe.
Yeah, and you gave us a pretty awesome starting point, an article straight from their website.
Which is great because we get to hear things straight from the source, no filter.
Exactly. As we go through this, we'll point out what stands out to us, maybe what might surprise you, and how it all fits into the big picture. Ready to go.
Absolutely. I'm curious what we're going to find. Okay, so the article starts with who they worship. One God, Jehovah.
Makes sense.
Right, standard for a religion that calls itself Christian, right?
You would think,
Yeah.
but there's this thing. They make a super clear distinction between Jehovah and Jesus.
Cool.
Yeah, so they see Jesus as God's son,
Okay.
but a separate being,
Okay.
not part of a trinity like some other Christian denominations have.
Interesting. Yeah, that definitely sets them apart a little bit.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about the Bible. How do they view that?
Huge emphasis on the Bible as God's inspired word.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing. They're not fundamentalists about it.
They're not.
No. They even acknowledge that some parts are symbolic.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's not every word is literally true.
Right.
It's more nuanced than that.
That's really interesting.
They even use the book of Revelation as an example.
Oh, okay.
All that wild imagery, beasts with 7 heads and these numbers and secret meanings.
Right.
They believe those are meant to be understood symbolically,
Okay.
not like literal events.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so then what about this? They believe God's kingdom is a real, literal government in heaven.
Yes.
We're not talking some abstract spiritual thing.
No, this is a real deal government.
Okay, a government.
A government.
That's not what I was picturing.
And get this, they believe it's going to replace all human governments.
Whoa.
Eventually.
Oh, okay.
And it will bring God's purpose for Earth to, actually happen.
Wow.
It's a pretty major belief.
Yeah.
And they back it up, too. They've got Bible verses like Daniel 2.44 and Matthew 6.910.
Wow, okay. That's heavy stuff. All right, so let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about salvation.
Okay.
They believe in it through Jesus' sacrifice, right?
Yeah.
But there's a catch.
There is a catch.
There's always a catch.
It's not as simple as just saying, oh, I believe in Jesus and that's it.
Right. Right.
They believe that salvation requires more than just faith.
Like
action.
Okay.
You got to change your life to line up with God's will.
Okay.
And then you get baptized as a symbol of that commitment.
Yeah. It's kind of like actions speak louder than words, right?
That's it. And they even quote James 2.24:26 to support that.
That's cool. Okay, so now for the big question. After we die, what happens?
Big question.
It's a big one. Yeah.
Okay, so they believe in heaven, where Jehovah, Jesus, the good angels, they all reside.
Makes sense.
But here's where it gets interesting. Only 144,000 people go to heaven to rule with Jesus.
What?
And that specific number comes straight from the book of Revelation.
144,000. That's a pretty small group.
A very exclusive club.
Yeah. Yeah. What about everybody else?
That's where the paradise earth comes in.
Okay, so
They believe that the vast majority of good people will live eternally on a restored paradise earth.
Not in heaven?
Not in heaven.
That's really different.
Yeah, it's a pretty unique view.
Okay, so heaven is for the ruling class and earth is for everyone else.
You got it.
Wow, okay. But what about all the bad stuff that happens in the world right now?
Right.
Yeah, like why is there evil and suffering?
So they believe it all started with a rebellious angel
Okay.
who became Satan.
Mm-hmm.
He tempted the first humans, and we're still dealing with the fallout.
Makes sense.
But here's the good news. They offer a hopeful outlook.
Okay.
They believe God will eventually end all evil and suffering.
So it's not forever.
It's not a permanent thing.
That's a relief.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that wouldn't be a very appealing religion if they just thought suffering was just part of life.
I know, right?
So evil and suffering aren't forever?
Nope.
But what about death? Is that the end of the story for them?
Well, they don't believe in like a fiery hell
Okay.
or eternal torment.
No, okay.
They say when you die, you just stop existing.
Okay, but
Another but. Okay, what's the but?
they believe in a resurrection where billions of people will be brought back to life on that paradise earth.
Oh, so it's like a second chance.
Yeah, but not quite a free pass.
Oh.
They also believe that those who reject God's ways after being resurrected will be destroyed permanently.
Oh, okay.
So, there are still stakes.
Yeah, so it's not just like, okay, everybody's coming back and it's going to be all good.
No, there are still consequences.
Okay.
In a sense, a lot to process.
It is. It seems like they have a very unique way of looking at things.
Right. Very distinct from maybe some other Christian groups.
Yeah. definitely.
That's striking you so far.
Honestly, it's the whole kingdom being a literal government in heaven.
I'm curious to learn more about, how that affects their everyday life.
Totally, totally. It's not just some theological concept for them.
Yeah.
It affects how they view family, community,
Yeah.
even their role in the world, like everything.
Yeah.
And this article talks about those things too.
Okay. So are you ready to jump into that?
Yeah, let's see what else we can uncover about this fascinating group.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Okay, so we were talking about how this whole belief in the kingdom, like a real government in heaven, affects their lives.
Right. Right.
So let's start with family.
Okay.
They have a very traditional view of marriage.
Yeah, the article said something about that.
Yeah, rooted in their understanding of the Bible.
Like, they see marriage as sacred, right?
Between one man and one woman.
One man, one woman.
And they take that commitment super seriously.
Mm-hmm.
Divorce is only allowed
Mm-hmm.
if there's been, like, sexual immorality.
Okay.
It's a big deal to them.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's like their faith really impacts how they live their lives.
Yeah, it's not just a Sunday thing, you know. It's like every day.
Right, yeah.
And speaking of that, what about their worship? There are some interesting things there.
Yeah, the article mentioned that.
Yeah, remember how they emphasize the symbolic interpretation of the Bible?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that shows up in their worship, too.
Okay.
Like, they don't use crosses or images.
They don't. Why not?
They believe it could lead to, like, idolatry.
Oh, okay.
And that goes against God's commandments.
So they're really focused on worshiping Jehovah directly.
Exactly. Nothing should get in the way of that.
So what does their worship actually involve? Like, what do they do?
Well, prayer is huge.
Okay, yeah.
They spend a lot of time studying the Bible,
Mm-hmm.
and they have regular meetings
Meetings for what?
where they get together, talk about their faith, encourage each other.
Okay, kind of like a community thing?
Yeah, yeah. And they call their places of worship kingdom halls.
Oh, okay. I've heard of those.
Not your typical churches,
Not like big cathedrals.
No stained glass windows or anything.
So it's more about the community and the shared beliefs.
Yeah, it's all about that. And get this, they don't have paid clergy.
What? No pastors getting a salary?
Nope. They're elders. They're all volunteers.
Oh, wow. That's different.
Yeah, it's pretty unique.
How does that work? Like, how do they choose those leaders?
They believe spiritual leadership shouldn't be a job,
Oh.
So elders are chosen from within the congregation
Okay.
based on their spiritual maturity
Yeah.
and if they're willing to serve.
So not because they have a seminary degree or something?
Nope, not at all. It's all about their character and dedication.
Okay, that makes sense. But how do they fund everything? Like the Kingdom Halls, printing all those pamphlets they're known for.
Right. Good question.
All that global preaching work they do. It
Yeah.
must cost a fortune.
It does. But it's all done through donations.
Donations.
Anonymous donations.
Oh,
Yeah, no collection plates, no pressure to give or anything like that.
wow, that's pretty amazing.
They believe giving should be voluntary, from the heart,
Right.
driven by your faith, not because you feel obligated.
That's pretty remarkable.
Right. It shows how dedicated they are.
And it says a lot about their community, too.
Yeah, they take care of their own. And that sense of community, it goes way beyond individual congregations, too.
What do you mean?
Like they have this global network
A global network.
of Jehovah's Witnesses, yeah.
Wow, that must be a huge undertaking.
It is, and it's guided by this central governing body.
Governing body.
They ensure unity of belief worldwide, kind of like a spiritual board of directors.
Okay, so they're all on the same page, doctrine-wise.
Yeah, exactly. They value consistency.
That's interesting because the article also mentioned that they respect individual choice.
Yes, they do.
So how do those two things work together?
That's a good question. So they encourage individual members to make their own decisions.
Even on, like, tough issues.
Even on tough issues.
Wow.
But they should be guided by their Bible-trained conscience.
Okay, so it's not just doing whatever you want.
No, it's about finding that balance
Well, it's between
between the unity of those core beliefs and recognizing that everyone's situation is different.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Kind of like their stance on blood transfusions. And their political neutrality. Those are pretty well-known aspects of their faith, right?
Very well known. And they both come straight from their understanding of the Bible.
Right.
Like, they believe participating in war
Mm-hmm.
and accepting blood transfusions
Okay.
are both violations of God's laws.
Okay, so they try to live by those principles.
They do, but without forcing them on others.
Right, they're not trying to convert everyone.
It's about personal conviction.
It must be hard to live with those beliefs in a world that doesn't always agree.
It can be, yeah. Like, they get a lot of criticism for their stance on blood transfusions.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But they stand firm in their beliefs.
Because their commitment to God's kingdom is more important.
Yeah, it takes priority over fitting in with, society's expectations.
It's almost like they're saying, we'll be good citizens, but we won't compromise on our faith.
You got it.
So they'll obey laws, pay taxes, but they won't do things that go against their conscience.
Exactly.
Like voting or military service.
Those things are seen as part of this world system.
Okay.
Which they believe is going to be replaced by God's kingdom, remember?
Yeah, right.
It's like they're living in two worlds at once almost.
It is. It's fascinating, living in the present, but always looking towards that future kingdom.
Yeah, it's a delicate balance, but it's at the core of what it means to be a Jehovah's Witness.
We've covered a lot, from God to the Bible to the afterlife.
Family life, community structure.
Even their views on the outside world.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It's definitely not just a religion they practice on Sundays.
You got that right.
It affects their whole lives.
It's woven into the very fabric of their existence.
And what strikes me is how consistent they are.
Yeah, it's all connected.
It's like they've built this whole worldview.
Based on their interpretation of the Bible.
And it guides everything they do.
Choices, actions, relationships, everything.
It's like a different lens for looking at the world.
Totally different.
I'm sure our listeners are thinking about this too.
I would hope so. We've just scratched the surface here.
But it's enough to get a sense of just how deep and complex their beliefs are.
Yeah. And whether you agree with them or not.
It's hard to deny how sincere they are.
And the strength of their community. That's undeniable.
That's a really good point. It's easy to dismiss groups that are different from us, but taking the time to understand them,
even if we don't share their beliefs,
is really valuable.
Totally. It helps us understand different ways of living, finding meaning.
Makes you think, doesn't it?
It does. This whole deep dive has given me a lot to think about.
Me too. But before we wrap up,
yeah,
there's one thing that keeps coming back to me.
What's that?
They talk about this paradise earth. But what does that actually look like to them? Like, what do they picture?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it's something they think about a lot.
They do.
They see it as a world without sickness, no poverty, no war.
That's amazing.
People living in harmony with nature and each other.
Sounds idyllic.
Doesn't it? It's a vision that really drives their hope and actions.
It's pretty optimistic, considering all the, doom and gloom we see in the world today.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
But how do they reconcile that vision with, human nature?
Yeah. Because we're not exactly known for being peaceful and cooperative all the time.
They acknowledge that human imperfection is a challenge.
Okay.
But they believe that under God's kingdom, things will be different.
Wow.
People will be educated in God's ways.
Okay.
And they'll gradually become perfect.
Okay.
Reflecting God's original purpose for humans.
So it's not like an overnight transformation.
No, it's a gradual process.
Okay. So it's like a long-term global education project.
Yeah, you could say that. And they see their preaching work as a vital part of that.
Makes sense.
They're giving people a chance to learn about God, align themselves with his purpose.
And be part of that paradise.
Exactly.
That's really interesting. It's like their beliefs about the future shape what they do today.
Yeah, it's all connected.
It's fascinating.
A powerful reminder that, beliefs really can impact how people live.
Yeah, and it makes me wonder, how do they see this transition to paradise actually happening?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it takes us into some of their beliefs about, the end times.
Oh, okay.
They have a very specific interpretation of what the Bible says about how this new world will come about.
Okay. Are you ready to explore that a little bit more?
Yeah, let's see where this conversation takes us.
I'm all in. Let's dive deeper. Okay, so we were talking about how Jehovah's Witnesses believe this paradise will actually come about.
Right. The big transition.
Yeah. So will it be a gradual thing or like a sudden big event?
They believe it's going to be a definite event, a big one.
Okay.
They call it the Great Tribulation.
The Great Tribulation. Okay, and what is that?
Well, it's described in the Bible, and they interpret it as this time of crazy upheaval and global crisis.
Okay, so like a time of turmoil before things get good.
Exactly, like a major shakeup.
Okay, so what do they think will happen during this Great Tribulation?
They believe all of the world's governments, like all of them.
Wow, okay.
And all the false religions, they'll all be destroyed.
That's a pretty intense picture.
Yeah, it's not subtle.
No.
They see it as God's judgment, on the world that has rejected him.